Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the Capital Region Family Business Center virtual event on mergers and acquisitions hosted by Curt Rocca with DCA Partners. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for attending and participating this morning. And before we get started, I have some fantastic good news. We have two new members that joined Family Business Center recently. The first one is Pool Master, and the second one is Bishop Pumpkin Farm in Wheatland. And so please welcome two new members to the Family Business Center, which is pretty incredible that they've joined us towards the end of, hopefully the end of this pandemic, because they've seen value in Family Business Center. And it's because of programs like this and because of people like you that we're able to continue to grow even under these difficult circumstances. So just as a little disclaimer, this event, this virtual event, is for educational purposes only, and to please consult with your professionals to talk about the details of your personal situation. The Family Business Center is a 501c3 nonprofit, and it was started over a decade ago by family businesses that really care about other family businesses. And our whole mission is to help family businesses to grow and prosper. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. And if you're not a member and would like more information, I will be sending out a follow-up email. Just respond to me and I will answer any questions you might have. We do have a Q&A section at the bottom. We're not going to be using the chat function, but the Q&A section at the bottom to answer questions after the presentation. And so, Curt, it's all yours. Please welcome your esteemed panel.
Great. Well, thank you, Stella, and welcome esteemed panel and welcome esteemed guests as well. When Stella and the Family Business Center Programs Committee approached us about putting on a panel relative to mergers and acquisitions, I think the first thing that struck me is that's pretty broad. Do we want to focus on how family-owned businesses can help to grow their businesses through acquisitions? And much like Tim Burke, you're going to hear, is doing, or as Jay Selby has just recently done with Selby Soil. Do we want to talk about, from a buyer's perspective, what a family business might do to help to maximize the value that the business will have in the event that they ever want to consider selling the business down the road? Or do we want to focus on the aspect of mergers and acquisitions that involves a family-owned business that has come to the conclusion that the time has now come, whether it's between G2 and G3, G3, G4, or frankly, even between G1 and G2, the time to have the family business sold and give up the stewardship of that, at least that family business in that state, to someone else. And the feedback was, yeah, that's exactly what we want to talk about. So we're going to try to tackle all three of those subjects today. And we're hoping that there will be something, irrespective of why you chose to give the next hour and a half of your time to participate and listen into the webinar. Hopefully there will be something in there for you. As Stella said, if we have skipped over, glossed over, or failed to cover the topic that you were really hoping we would touch on, or if you want to drill deeper in one of the comments that's made from one of our panelists, please put it in that Q&A section button that Stella mentioned. So we are, as Stella said, and as I tried to reference, joined by a great and diverse panel of experts. We have Clark Wormer from Hub International. I'm doing this thinking people can know who I'm pointing to, but Tim Burke from Quest Technology, Jay Selby from Selby Soil, and Rich Doellstedt from Richmond Wholesale Meat. And again, each one of those panelists is going to share a very specific experience set with the audience today. So before we jump in, I'd like to ask each one of the panelists to just do a brief self-introduction of who you are, what your role within your company is, how long the company's been around, what it is that you do, and what role, what aspect of mergers and acquisitions you hope to touch on today. So with that, Clark, do you mind starting the introductions?
Sure, and it's great to meet folks virtually today. My name is Clark Warmer. I work for an insurance brokerage firm called Hub International. We're the 4th largest brokerage firm in the world. We handle, a little plug for the company, we handle commercial lines, personal lines, employee benefits, retirement consulting practices. We have a large operation based in Sacramento and also in Roseville. Tim Burke is a client if you want a referral. So we've got a bunch of really great people. If anyone is ever looking to have a quote on their insurance, set that aside. We've got about 13,000 people at the company, and we're the largest broker in the state of California. So plug on the company. My job, though, specifically is I oversee all of corporate development and M&A for Hub International. There's 35,000 independent insurance agencies in the United States, another 8,000 in Canada. It's a highly fragmented industry, and we are out there trying to find the best regional entrepreneurial sales-orientated firms and bring them in and turbocharge those by allowing them access to our industry-leading tools and resources that provide world-class service for our clients. As a result of that, last year, Hub acquired 65 of these agencies, spending approximately $1 billion. It's a big part of our strategy to bring in best-in-class talent, and many of those are family businesses that have been handed down through generations, started by grandma or grandpa, and have come down through time. And so today, I can shed a little bit of light on what we see when we're courting these businesses and some of the dynamics that the families and the generations work through as they consider internal perpetuation versus selling to a strategic buyer and crystallizing what, for most of you, I'm assuming on this, your largest asset is your business. So that, Curt, happy to facilitate any questions. And to note, I have a hard stop in 45 minutes. Sorry in advance for jumping off early.
Yep, no, duly noted, and you were clear about that time frame when we solicited you to be part of the panel. So we appreciate the 45 minutes that you are able to give us. Tim, do you want to follow that up from Quest's perspective?
Sure. Tim Burke. Good morning, everyone. President and CEO of Quest. We've been around, started in the Sacramento area about 37, 38 years ago, and we deliver technology services. Started out delivering actually what was referred to at the time computer supplies, and now we manage medium scale, large scale companies around the world with their computer requirements, computer technology, working directly with customers and with partners. I am, of course, first generation. I have second generation kids in kids. They're not kids anymore.
They're always kids.
In the company, they're always kids that work with me in various components of the business. And hopefully today we have been acquiring. We've acquired 3 companies in the last 18 months, and some of the processes of going that direction and some insights both on being a target of a lot of organizations that come after people like me, but at the same time we're out acquiring people. So kind of both perspectives that I might be able to share.
Perfect. We'll take all we can get. Jay, well, I'll let you. I won't steal any of your thunder. You want to introduce yourself and Selby Soil?
Yeah, so Jay Selby Jr., president of Selby Soil Erosion Control. My dad started the company, founded the company in 1968, when there wasn't really any EPA laws for stormwater management. There was no EPA laws for really anything in the heavy construction industry. And so he was still a pioneer in our realm. And back then in the 60s and 70s, it was kind of a part-time job for him. He also was involved heavy in real estate and other things. But I joined after school in 1995 to the company, and it was around the same time that regulations got really tight for the erosion and sediment control. on job sites and construction sites. The EPA had formed several laws along with the Water Quality Control Board that really changed how projects were viewed in California. It should have been a nationwide push, but California definitely is the first in green energy, protecting the environment, protecting wildlife. So the company just really blew up organically in the late 90s and throughout 2000. We really sustainable, fast growth, and we kept growing and growing, and the next thing we knew, we were 4 times larger than any of our competitors. We are Caltrans and Department of Water Resources go-to an emergency basis. Projects such as like the Oroville Dam, we're there first on site, trying to figure out how to protect the environment, the soil loss that they had when the dam almost broke, and as well as wildfires has become a huge part of our business. We're kind of Caltrans go-to to make sure there's no mudslides after post fire, because that's always a danger. We were the first on scene in Paradise, making sure that the 2 main thoroughfares roads that go into Paradise stayed open without mudslides. They were still doing body searches and looking for people at that point in time. And we were in Paradise for a year and a half after that. So same with Santa Rosa, things like that. But our normal workload is doing regular Caltrans work. We work for developers, dams, landfills, anything that moves a lot of dirt is what our niche market is. And we've scaled again pretty aggressively in the last 5 years to get ready for something like a merger or an acquisition. And we just successfully a year ago pulled an acquisition off in Idaho, Washington. And so now we're covering not only California, but other states as well. So that's kind of a nutshell where we are and who we are. And glad to be part of this.
Tell us all about how that acquisition went and why there's a beautiful boat sitting behind you on a lake. And I know there's more to that story that we're going to hear later.
Yeah.
Mr. Doellstedt, tell us your story.
Yeah, my name is Rich Doellstedt. Second generation. I'm the CEO. Our company's been around 61 years. Richmond Wholesale Meat is the name of our company. Started here in Richmond, California. And we have, we're number 2 in the military, providing for troop feeding for all of our troops overseas, the U.S. military. And so we're number 2, only behind Tyson, who's number 1. And so we're kind of the small engine that could, based in Richmond. We have 2 locations, also an LA location. And so we're shipping out, containers all the time. We just recently completed we were acquired, 75% acquisition. So now we answer to a different boss as of January 1. And I'll tell more details there, Curt, as we get down the road. But it's been a very good strategic alignment. And but anyway, looking forward to share some more details later.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So thanks to everybody for, I think you did a fabulous job of setting the groundwork for the discussion. Clark, since I know you do have that hard stop that you referenced, let me actually start with you. So as you mentioned, Hub's in the process of acquiring literally dozens of businesses each year, as you mentioned, many of which are in fact family owned. What are some of the main reasons that you hear from these family-owned businesses as to why they are now interested in at least sitting down and having a conversation and exploring the possibility of them actually selling their proud family business?
Sure. And there's a lot of reasons that go into why a family considers a sale, but ultimately it's largely driven by valuation. 10 years ago, the valuation of insurance brokerages trade on a valuation of an EBITDA multiple. So a multiple of profits before taxes, EBITDA. And 10 years ago, valuations for agencies was 6, 7, 8 times EBITDA. So at those valuations, the delta between internally perpetuating the and selling it to the next generation of the family versus what the next generation could fund themselves, borrowing from a bank against a mortgage in their home or however they're going to do it, the delta between internal perpetuation between the generations and external perpetuation selling to a third party wasn't that far of a spread. But in the last 10 years, as the stock market's currently over 31,000 points, took a little dip today, but it's obviously been on quite a run. Valuations for insurance brokerages have pushed 9, 10, 11, 12. Publicly traded companies trade for 14, 15 times profits. At those valuations, internal perpetuation just can't match what the larger national firms are willing to pay for a brokerage firm. So for example, we had our Sacramento office, which is best in class. They joined us in December of 2016. It's led by Rob McVicker, a young, aggressive leader. His father-in-law, Paul Bostrowski, was the founder of the John O'Bronson Company and ran that company for many, many years. And they considered internal family perpetuation, but they ultimately wanted to join a firm like ours that delivered best-in-class, world-class resources to make that firm better. So ultimately, 2 reasons I think go into the discussion, Curt, and I'll turn it back to you. One, the spread between what internal perpetuation can afford to pay versus what an agency is truly worth in a third-party sale, that valuation spread. And 2, frankly, many smaller family businesses it's hard for them to make the technology investments and the other type of investments that a larger firm has already made, and thus can offer the employees and the clients of that regional firm.
Yep. No, you actually answered the question that I was intending to ask there for a second ago, which is, is it really an economically driven decision, or is there also sort of a strategic and just, looking out for the best interests of the firm and their clients in terms of being able to actually continue to provide, best in class levels of service? And it sounds like it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, and once again, a little plug for us. What we do in a situation like this is we structure our deals, and it's similar. They're all different in all different industries, but we typically do a closing payment that's so we pay 100% of the base valuation up front, which is typically 90% cash, 10% stock. We're backed by a large private equity firm, the largest on the West Coast. Hellman & Friedman owns 70% of our firm. Our employees own 30%. We're a huge portfolio company within a fund 9 of Hellman & Friedman. But what we do then is we have an earnout. And the earnout is over 3 to 4 years post-closing, which is tied to future growth. And what we do is we structure the earnout so a bigger chunk of the earnout goes to the employees and to oftentimes the next generation. So there's an opportunity for G2 and G3 struggling with the decision. We're able to structure transactions where G2 gets their proceeds and maximizes valuation, but we can structure upside in the form of cash and stock for G3 to drive the business forward over a 2 or 3 year period and make a lucrative windfall for themselves. So we've gotten very complicated in a good way in structuring and creative to allow both G2, in my example, to max proceeds that they wouldn't do in internal perpetuation, as well as structure upside in the form of equity and growth-based bonuses, all via cap gains in really attractive tax structured ways to provide the best of both worlds.
Yeah, take advantage of those tax structured or tax advantages while we still have them, right?
Yeah, in California, we want to limit W-2 income where we can, and structuring earnouts tied to future performance is a great way for firms to join us and to minimize tax exposure.
Yeah, understood. So what are some of the things when you, as a buyer coming in and you see, as you mentioned in the outset, you've seen everything in terms of planes and boats and uncles and aunts and cats and dogs probably on the payroll. But when you are wearing that buyer's hat, you come in, you're talking to a family about their family business. What are some of the things that the businesses that you ascribe maximum value to have in common? What are some of the things that companies do that you say, you know what, we're willing to pay? We're not willing, you gave a broad range. I mean, it's still an attractive range, but still, you said, 8 to 9 to 10 to as much as 12 times. Well, that's a big gap. So what differentiates a 12x company from an 8x company?
Sure. And let me give you two pieces of advice, and I'm going to tell you the dirty secret that the investment bankers charge you 4% of your purchase price for. And here's what it is. We always value a company based on the trailing 12-month results. LTM, trailing 12 months. Obviously, right now, we're looking at deals based on their full year 2020 results. But what the banker does is they develop a pro forma. And a pro forma is just a fancy way of removing all of the non-recurring expenses. Most family businesses have some level of lifestyle expenses that go through their P&L. Maybe they expense the vacation. Maybe they got the 2 kids in college on the payroll that aren't really working. Maybe they do charity work that the husband or the wife are very involved in a local charity and they run that through the business for tax deducts. All of these things happen and we see it all the time, and it's okay. But if you go through and you develop and you say, hey, yeah, my business has $3 million of revenue and last year it made $500,000, but there were $500,000 of other expenses that really won't continue forward because you're not going to employ my 2 children in college or my housekeeper that's on the payroll or my boat captain. We've seen it all. And then all of a sudden you can say, look, even though my business was $500,000 in the past, my real ongoing profitability, if you acquire me, buyer, you don't need all my accounting person and, Betty over here or John over here was really a family friend that isn't pulling his weight. Make those tough decisions up front before you come to market, because a sophisticated buyer is going to make those decisions afterwards. And here's the difference. If you right size your business and get rid of all of the extra stuff, then a buyer will pay you on a normalized EBITDA, even if it isn't your historical EBITDA. Point one. And point two, there's a point at which each of your businesses will start to decline in their value. For us, we're valuing talent. We're valuing salespeople. That's the insurance brokerage. It's about relationships. So whether it's like a financial services or a law firm or whatever, we're in the people business. Well, just like baseball players, there's a time in which Mike Trout can max his contract, and there's a time when he won't max his contract. For our business, there's a life cycle of when a business is worth its most money. And for the most part, that's when the bulk of the leadership team is in their 40s and 50s. When that full leadership team gets into its 60s or 70s, that company is worth less than if they, so that's the balance a family business has to, you want to milk your profits as long as you can until you sell it. But there's a point where if you milk it too long, you start having a diminishing valued asset.
Yep, no, that's good comments. I know, Rich, you had some experience on that the pro forma side in terms of going through that. Anything that you would add to what Clark's comments were there?
Well, it was a learning. I learned a lot. I think as far as, getting the value out, I think we started with kind of getting an estimate. We kind of opened that door of, hearing people like Clark come to us and say, there's opportunities here. It was a long process, though, for us to go through, a lot to contemplate. 57 years. At that point, we were 58 years old. One president, that was my father. He had just recently passed away. Our mother had just passed away. So, but anyway, we had a certain firm come in called DCA that helped to get us there. And actually, and provided a lot more value than we even realized.
I appreciate the comment. And as part of that, you guys did do a complete corporate reorganization in order to be able to present the company in the manner that Clark was saying, sort of getting your house in order before going to market, or in your case, sort of concurrently with going to market.
Right. I read a lot of books on it beforehand, and I realized it's important to get your act in order. So when you come to people like Clark, it's you have a nice package. Our package wasn't as nice, but it was the impetus. One thing drove the other. It was the impetus to get our house in order. It gave us some motivation instead of goals, instead of timelines. And of course, in working with our broker, it was very effective.
Yeah, and to that point, for most industries, there are middle market financial brokers that will help you with that process. And what they do is really three things, because we work with them all the time. We work with Goldman Sachs, and we work with the little 2-person mom and pop broker team. And they do really three things for you. One, they know the landscape, they know the potential buyers, and they make you those introductions. Two, they put together the package, including the pro forma, to basically help you max price. And then finally, three, they drive competitive pressure between the buyers to increase price. So as much as we love to try to get to the end targets directly, Curt and Rich, oftentimes, and smartly by the families, they bring in a third party to help them navigate that. And typically those will pay anywhere from 2% to 4% of the purchase price, but oftentimes they get you more money and it pays for itself.
Hey, Clark, this is Tim. Quick question. You mentioned you have an equity partner involved in Hub and in supporting your transactions. And in my experience, and maybe everyone on the call is familiar with equity partners, but in your case, or in most cases, equity partners have a 4 to 7, 9 year window based on a fund. And then I think of them as house flippers. I mean, they're flipping houses. In your case, is that different, or and is that not the norm in the sense of when you get involved that you should expect another transaction to be happening pretty quickly because they're looking to cash out and flip the situation?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of dry powder that is in the world of private equity, which we could spend an hour on, I think is like $3 trillion. They've added up that, did you know that the largest employer in the United States is the government. The second largest is Walmart, and the third is the aggregate portfolio companies of KKR. Think about that. If you add up all of the employees of the KKR portfolio companies, it's the third largest employer in the United States. So private equity is changing the way these vehicles work. Hub, founded in 1998, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange up until 2007. I joined the company in 2005. I was the 9th corporate employee. So come forward 2007. At the time, we're traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We think we're like a big deal. We get approached by a private equity firm, Apex Partners, one of the 10 mega funds in the United States out of New York. They said, hey, would you think? We're like, no, we're not going to touch private equity. Look, we're on the New York Stock Exchange. And they said, well, look at the math. We're going to buy you for 10 times. We're going to take on 6 turns of leverage. That gives you 4 turns of equity. Management's going to share in the equity. If you increase the company, instead of that being spread around to all the shareholders, we get to keep it. We did the math. Here's the math. So we went private in 2007 with Apex Partners. As you all are aware, in 2008, 2009, the worst economy of our lifetime, of anyone that's on this Zoom, happened in 2008 and 2009. In 2012, we came through it, insurance brokerage. Everyone needs insurance. People will keep paying their insurance before they pay their employees, or else you foreclose on your bank debt, right? We came back in 2008. We flipped the company out in 2013, exactly like you said, 6 years later. And if you put in $1 million, you got back $3 million. We made a 26 IRR and made a 3x return from 2008 through 2013. And we recapped from that time Apex Partners to another mega fund, Hellman and Friedman. So now we're kind of running through the end of this. But with big private equity, they buy into sophisticated management teams and they leave us alone. It's more of a financial engine. Different private equity though, smaller funds, because I know there's all different size family companies here. Smaller private equity sometimes is more involved in your day-to-day life. With big private equity, think, TPC, KKR, Carlyle, Kohlberg, Apex, Hellman and Friedman, Madison Dearborn, those funds, they're largely buying established public company-like companies and just make financial plays, finance them with debt, and stay out of the weeds. In our case, of our 13,000 employees, 2,000 of them are shareholders.
Perfect. I'm gonna try to bring us back around. So Clark, we were talking about some of the things that add to value. The flip side to that is obviously, what are some of the things that you see as a buyer, and Tim and Jay as well? I mean, as you guys look at companies, be interested in everybody's perspective on this, but what are some of the things that cause you to, when you're looking at the business, either say, yeah, we might have an interest, but it's going to be at this diminished value, or, even worse, this isn't something of interest at all? What are some of the things that you see that cause things to fall into that bucket?
Yeah, and I've been talking too much, so I'm going to make this quick and then turn it over to everyone else. Make sure you got your books in order. It's amazing that I see $10 million companies and they don't really have a good grasp of their financials. They don't have a good grasp of how they pay all their people, or how their revenue is recognized, or the lumpiness of their revenue, and good forecasts and budgets. It's amazing how many family businesses don't actually have an annual business plan and an annual budgeting process. Many family businesses have grown, or they went from 1 million to 5 million, and they're still treating their company like it's $1 million in revenue. If you're a $5 million family business, you should have strategic planning, an annual budget, quarterly goals. You should treat it like a real business. And that to us shows the sophistication of the leadership team. When people actually have a good grip of their numbers, they have projections, and actually they achieve their projections. Rich, Tim, Jay, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I'll hop in for a second. I think some of the best business advice that I received years ago was to always build your business, even though it might be a small family business and you might be, you might have a boat captain. That's a great one. I haven't thought of that one yet, but you might be interjecting a lot of other costs into your company that are more personal. But always build your business as if you're going to sell it within the next 5 years. And so if you look at your business that way, even though we have no plans to sell right now, but look at plan to sell in 5 years, what does that look like? What are the processes that would need to be in place in the company? What are the steps that would need to be taken to sell? And really what you do internally is you make your company really posed for growth. If you don't sell, now you're ready to take on new markets, new businesses, because you've structured it properly.
Yeah, perfect. Tim, things to add to that in terms of the
the financial side, in terms of when we look at companies, you do find, we deal in the tech space, and technology people always aren't the best at keeping their technologists. So when you come in and look at it from a financial side, trying to really understand what their financials are and how they're structured and what their forecasts are oftentimes fairly hit and miss. And that does cause us some concerns in terms of, well, what are we really getting ourselves into on a historical, and what do they believe their future looks like? And so that financials, just if you have a strong controller, I'm not sure, a lot of us don't necessarily big enough to have full-time CFOs, but if you have a strong controller, audited, preferably financials, makes life easier in terms of when we come in and look at that and know the story of the numbers. And I think one of the challenges that we've had at times is we get surprised a lot, because we come in and we're presented a set of numbers, and maybe there's investment bankers involved and they put together these real pretty portfolios. Not that it would ever happen, I'm sure, but you go forward.
Is that a dig, Tim?
No, not at all. But you see something, this story about all the great things that are going to happen, and then you get into the numbers at a due diligence or even before due diligence, and it really starts to crumble pretty quickly. That's just not good. We would much rather know the reality up front and possibly be able to figure out how to work through that reality rather than that cosmetic approach that some people would take when they're interested in selling their business.
Yeah, Tim, I think if I could piggyback on that, we did not have a CFO in place when we started this process. Clark, I think you said you should have a budget after your 1 million. Well, we were at 130 million. We didn't have a budget or a CFO. and so I guess, so it's still able to happen, even though we had missed the boat there somewhere. But we quickly put on a contract CFO, actually based out of the Auburn area that really brought us up to speed. We still never put together a budget, but I guess DCA helped us on that to kind of get something that would work. The CFO helped us. So even though we were behind the 8 ball, we did make quick work of it, because exactly what you're saying, we have to present something to the outside world. And so we're very thankful for the teamwork. Actually, I think capital planning, are they part of this group? This
They
family?
are. Capital planning advisors, they are. Yeah.
Yeah, so they actually helped us get a lot of good references and advice. And so, you can't do it without good teamwork to kind of bring you up to speed.
No, no.
And I've got to sign off here in 5 minutes, so I'll make one final comment here, Curt.
Please.
When Rob McVicker, that's our leader here in Sacramento. If anyone, plug for Hub again, if anyone's looking for insurance, Rob.
I think you're at your limit. You're right at your limit there.
He joined us in December of 2014, and their firm was $17 million in revenue, a large regional platform for insurance. Today, they'll cross the $30 million plateau through growth, through adding producers and salespeople and growing the business and acquisitions. And what I would say, the same thing I said to Rob, is what I would, some advice for all of you if you consider a process. What we tell sellers is every meeting you take with us before we make you an offer will result in us paying you more money. And they think I'm joking. And they're like, wait, if I meet with you 5 times, every time you're going to pay me more money? You go, yes. Because the more time you can spend with that other buyer, potential buyer, it not only allows you to further impress them, but they get more comfortable with you, and they get more comfortable opening their wallet. And that would be my advice for all of you, which is, if you're going to consider selling your business, everyone always says you're never for sale except for the day you wake up out of bed, and that's the day you decide you're for sale. It doesn't hurt to start getting to know who some of the strategic buyers are in your business for years, so that when that day comes that you wake out of bed and you say, today's the day I think I want to sell my business, have relationships with who you think could be the most likely potential buyers, so that when that day comes, they've already built a comfort level with you.
Yep.
Curt?
Perfect. Well, Clark, thank you for joining us. Again, we appreciate the 45 minutes you were able to give us. And we certainly got our money's worth out of that time. So
yeah, now Jay and Rich and Tim will be able to get a word in.
On that note, Tim.
See you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Tim, I'm gonna shift it over to you, just to see if there's anything else from a process standpoint that you wanted to add to what some of Clark's comments in terms of, take meetings, understand who's out there, get your house in order. Rich mentioned, getting the right advisors, but anything else from advice, if you were to, you mentioned you did 3 acquisitions over the last 18 months. And now that those are done, if you were able to go back in time and give those 3 companies advice on things that maybe they should have done differently if they were to do it over again, any words of wisdom for them?
In all 3 of those examples, we were fortunate, and they were to some degree partners of ours. So we had been working with them for a number of years, and that helped. We knew them, they knew us. We had been, so back to the earlier comments that have been made about knowing who's out there and knowing. So we had been talking. I think the specific area, whether you're in an acquisition mode or a sale mode, is to really understand, well, what's your objective? And I really find both in the, and I try to drill down on this when people come to me and want to acquire me, or when I'm out trying to acquire someone, asking that question, well, what clearly are you trying to achieve here? So in our example, I try to drill down very quickly. If someone walks in and calls me, and I meet with a lot of equity partners, strategic buyers who want to acquire me, and I ask them specifically, what are you trying to make happen? Are you in roll-up mode? Are you in our business, there's something called a platform mode where they're trying to find a platform. That's another term you'll hear, that then they're going to tack on other things. So they have a strategy. Do they have a strategy for the industry? And what is that strategy? And the same when I talk to people that from an acquisition standpoint, what are they trying to do?
Right.
And to have that fairly specific in your own mind as you move through the process or begin the process is really helpful on both sides. And I find a lot of times that's not the case, or people want to kind of pretend they don't have a strategy or they don't have a plan, but in reality they do. I went through on an acquisition situation where someone was trying to acquire me. I went all the way through middle of due diligence with what I kept asking this question and got a certain answer. And then middle of the due diligence process, literally they then came in and introduced me to their individual who was going to be responsible for building out their platform and other targets that he was looking to add to me. So at the middle of the due diligence, I get introduced to some guy I've never met before. I have no idea what his background is, but all this time is they want my strategy and want to know how I'm going to market, where in reality, they had a plan and they knew what they wanted to do, and they had their, guys back in Connecticut running their spreadsheets, and they had a plan. And it was a very frustrating experience, even though I had asked multiple times what their strategy was. And candidly, that's what transitioned me from the standpoint of, I'm kind of tired of dealing with the guys trying to acquire me. I think there's a better way to go out and acquire companies that companies might enjoy more. And so what really transitioned us to be an acquirer versus someone that was going to be acquired.
So talk about that a little bit, if you would, about, what Quest's acquisition strategy is. And because you've gone through, as you mentioned, literally decades of very impressive organic growth, just kind of hand over hand, building the business year over year. And really, it's relatively recently, I think, that you've embarked upon acquisitions layering on to the organic growth. What drove that decision, other than the point that you just mentioned? And also, what do you see now, having done a number of acquisitions? What do you see as the advantages to a business of growing through acquisition, either as opposed to or in addition to pursuing organic growth?
Well, from the standpoint of the transition for us in terms of moving to acquisitions versus being the target and being acquired, was driven by specific experiences that this isn't very fun. I don't like it. Someone referred a book to me that I think it was called Equity Partner Playbook. And it was written by a gentleman. He was very positive about the whole equity partner process and how it works and how everyone should be a part of it. And I literally, my wife walked into my bedroom where I was in my chair reading this book, and she goes, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, it's something. Why? Oh, you looks like the color's all drained from your face, and you look ill." And I thought, oh my gosh. So physically, by reading this book and really understanding a lot of how these equity partners work and their strategies and so forth, was such a negative personally for me. It was a great book. And it really helped me understand what I was possibly considering. And so that was that, and the experience I had with this couple equity partners turned me into the acquisition mode of there's that theory of multiple that was talked about earlier. In our industry, there are people that over the last 15 or 20 years started out selling product. And in our industry, margins have consistently fallen in product. In 2015, 20 years ago, I was in a meeting with CEO at that time, with John Chambers, who was a Cisco. And he said, hey, all you, we were called VARs, you guys need to really move out into managed services and professional services and infrastructure services under your own offerings, because this product world is really going to not be pretty over the next 15, 10 years. And we were all there, and I thought everyone was listening to the same conversation. And so I started going down that road, and over that 15 years have significantly made that transition. And I, about 5 or 6 years ago, came to realize that a lot of my other folks in the industry had not. And so their multiples are down at a different level, and our multiples are up at a much higher level. And the idea occurred to me that we could potentially acquire people. One of the reasons, acquire people from a strategic standpoint and add them to our organization, and then have them who help them cross-sell our additional services into their customers, because they all had great relationships. They, however, were lacking in the services and managed services and technology services that we offer. So we can marry the two from a strategic standpoint and be successful. And so that's what we've embarked on, and it's worked.
Jay, how about you? I mean, you guys, similar situation. You just bit off a big chunk, right? Not only acquiring a new business, but acquiring a new business in a geography several states away. You want to talk about what led up to that?
Yeah, really got to go back several years to, we're a family business. We don't have a succession plan past me. And so I got advice from my main CPA at the time, 7, 8 years ago. And he said, is there anybody inside your company that truly treats it like it's theirs and would have an interest in being a partner? My dad, by the way, just turned 89 years old last week, and just got his first COVID shot. So pretty excited about that. Anyways, so there was a person in my company, his name's Brandon, that had shown interest in being a partner. So the first step was actually, adding him to the company, convincing my dad to sell some of his stock to Brandon, and getting a good vice president role in the company. Then we started scaling at that point. Now, it's not just me running everything and wearing 40 hats. Now I have somebody to help build the company with. And we cast a pretty large net over Northern California, Nevada, and Oregon. We were dominating these markets. We continued to grow. We kept looking at it and looked at our market cap and realized that we were kind of approaching our market cap for these regions without drastically dropping prices and buying projects, which we didn't want to do. We didn't want to drop profit margins. So it was kind of a lead into, okay, well, we need to cast our net farther. We need to look into the Pacific Northwest. We've been watching the trends. The trends are that, California is the leader in anything environmental, and that's what drove our business here. But there's also a mass exodus out of California right now. The town that I'm living in up here part-time in Idaho, Kootenai County, which is where Lake Coeur d'Alene, which is behind me, is located, is now the fastest growing county in the nation over the last 6 months. So we actually did good research. We picked a good area for growth. So that all kind of fell in place there. And we know that environmental laws that govern our work is going to continue to grow in these other states as the exodus of California heads out, and just naturally, environmental laws are getting tighter and tighter across other states.
Right.
So that kind of led us to start looking into, okay, we've scaled the company, we've got the company to a point now where every role is defined, everybody knows their positions, we can actually do this in another location. And that took years, years of actually bringing in outside consultants to really look at our business. Where are the holes? What do we need to plug? What portions do we need to address more? What do we need to outsource? Things like HR, IT, things like that, to really build the infrastructure to scale to multiple states. So we started taking a hard look at buying this company 2 years ago, and at the same time, I still was wearing a lot of hats in the company, and the financial role that I was still involved with was too much. And at that same time, we looked at adding another partner who came from our CPA firm, and he was interested in being a partner of the company. He knew us pretty intimately. He was involved in our taxes, and we were good friends to boot. So it was a win-win. So he came on as a CFO role, which allowed me to kind of free up more of my time to really look into expansion. So we ended up buying this company up in Idaho, and a little over just a year and a month ago is when we closed. And it's been quite an experience. I know we'll kind of get a little more into what it took to get there, but in our case, to grow and to scale, adding the partners, spreading out the roles, changing the hats you wear was pretty key.
If you would synthesize the feedback you got from all those expensive consultants, anybody else you might have had come in for the audience, and share with us, if you would, what are those critical elements to make sure you have in place before you think about going and acquiring another company and trying to incorporate it into your organization? Can you talk about where some of those gaps were and what you did to fill them? And then Tim, I'd like to get your perspective on this when he's done on the same question.
It's funny, you talk to a lot of small businesses and you kind of hear the same answer when you say, well, why do you guys do it that way? They say, well, that's how we've always done it. And so which isn't a really great answer, right? But bringing an outside consultant to really analyze your company and take a better look at it was key in that. What's our financial dashboard look like? What is our forecast? What is our budget? Things like that. Smaller companies don't think about budgets. They kind of just roll year after year, and then really getting those month-end closes, making sure everybody knows their role, that everybody's on target, setting goals for the company was huge. We had fallen really behind on things like IT. Web design, social media, HR, safety. So all these things had to be fine-tuned, and then roles in the company had to be really defined well so that they could be replicated to other individuals, other pieces that you might add in the future.
Now that you've done the acquisition up in Idaho, did the company you acquire fill any of those gaps themselves? Did they make you better in some of those areas, or did you really shore yourself up where you really had the stronger team in each one of those different disciplines?
No, actually, I've learned a lot from the owner that we bought out. I've known the owner of this company we bought for probably 15 years. We had worked together in the past, and we had partner projects, and so I knew him pretty well. But it was a very integral part of keeping him on board and active in this company for at least the next 5 years. It's his knowledge of the area, the customer base, the processes. Coming from California, which you're probably 70 degrees right now, I'm looking out my window, it's snowing, it's like 30 degrees. Just the work environment is completely different. everything is, everything runs a little different up here. So it was very, very huge part to keep him on as a consultant. Originally, when we looked into buying him, he actually wanted to stay on. He wanted to be a small percentage owner. And we had to kind of convince him that, no, we're buying you, but we'll keep you on as a consultant, and we'll tie you to our bottom line over the next 5 years, help us grow, retire, which is what your original plan was. And I think that's kind of one of the keys that we didn't expect, but as somebody that's ready to retire and ready to sell their company, they're kind of burnt out at that point, right? But as you start talking about acquiring them and what you're going to do with the company, their excitement level starts increasing. And now they want to be a part of what you're doing instead of just retiring and letting it happen. So we experienced that. We convinced them, no, let us buy you. We didn't want to take on any of his liabilities. So we did not buy his company per se. We bought equipment, blue sky.
Sure.
So, which is I think a really key point. You're buying a business, you don't know what lawsuits could happen, whether it be a sexual harassment claim, a workman's comp claim, anything could creep up from the past. So we felt it important to form a new corporation up here and buy him just more equipment, blue sky.
Got it. Tim, how about you? And what are the critical things that you wanted to make sure you had in place? I mean, Quest is a much larger organization. You're buying smaller companies, so a lot of this probably was easier for you from an integration standpoint. But any advice that you would offer to companies to make sure that they have in place before
that's
they try
interesting. I appreciate that comment being easier. I've spent the last 18 months in our organization really working towards getting the financials, a lot of the processes in our own organization better performing and cleaned up. And I thought that was really important for us to do. I think most important for us was a good understanding of what we could do and what we couldn't do. So there's numbers of opportunities out there. We sat down and we really understood from an acquisition standpoint, this is how we have to acquire people. This is the kind of organizations we are looking to acquire. This is how we can finance them. And so we were really upfront and candid with people that we did talk to. And we've talked to others who have said, no, we want 12 times EBITDA and we want it all in cash up front. We go, well, that's good luck, because we can't play here. So we had to define that for ourselves and use that definition as how we would go to do the acquisition, so that, know thyself and know what you really can do. We also took the position of different than Jay. We actually acquired companies. We acquired their stock. We've kept them. We've played a little bit of I don't want to give any indication that we're in a Berkshire Hathaway kind of a world, but we acquired people from a perspective of keeping them as operating units separately, where we're doing their financials separately and helping and cross-selling with them to work together and keeping their units intact. And so they become what we call Quest companies. So whatever the name of the company was, it's still that name. It's got the same folks. They're operating independently with a lot of engagement and cross-selling. It was just, that's how we thought we wanted to go to market specifically. And this is a derivative of my experience working with equity partners and the whole roll-up mentality in my industry. I didn't want to participate that. I mean, we had owners that like what they do, want to continue what they do, and we wanted to be supportive of that. Certainly, there are things that we've collapsed in our organization, had to make sure we were ready to deal with, payroll, HR, some of those functions, marketing. But for the most part, we're working with them as in a supportive role, and that we had to clearly define that for ourselves before we entered out into the marketplace.
No, that's helpful. Well, Rich, you've been patiently, I want to bring you back into the conversation because I think you have a great story to tell to this audience. That's an important one as well. As you touched on earlier, you're part of a second generation group of siblings. Your parents started the business. Every one of your kids grew up your whole lives really working in the business before you were probably legally able to work, and so on and so forth. And you obviously ultimately came to the conclusion that the right thing to do for the family and the right thing to do for the business was to not try to hand it down to G3. Can you talk a little bit about that exploration process within the family unit and how those conversations came to pass and how you ultimately came to the conclusion you came to?
Yeah, absolutely, Curt. Can you guys hear me okay? There you go. Yeah, it was, we thought we'd live forever. And even though as funny as that sounds, we know life was short, but until mom and dad passed, they were stable marriage, 60 years marriage, the business 60 years old, actually 65 years, business 60 years old, but eventually they passed, had a good life, good marriage. But all of a sudden the 5 kids started looking each other in the face and saying, wow, we're almost at retirement age. We don't have a succession plan. And then we started to look at the bottom line and says, we've done a lot of good work in 60 years, but the bottom line doesn't look that strong. So we said, let's explore, see if we can sell it. But there were basically 3 reasons that we came down to. First of all, estate planning, like I just mentioned. The second one was that we had hit a ceiling. I call it a ceiling, and you read about that in various management books. But we clearly hit a ceiling on the management equation as well as the sales equation. We have to face the brutal facts, like Jim Collins would say, and our sales were flat last 5 years. There was no succession plan, there was no growth, and we were all getting older. So there was a 3rd gen option, my daughter, but that was probably the tough part. We had a very strong legacy, but we started asking tough questions and it wasn't timing for her. So that was the second reason was we hit a ceiling on our growth. And if we didn't change that, as we all know, businesses that don't grow, they die. So that was a very strong reality. Again, a key management principle. Third one is succession planning. We had 55 employees. They weren't looking to retire. They weren't dying off. They weren't moving on. They loved working for us. So there was a sense of responsibility of how do we take care of those 55 families. And you add all 3 of those together, and that's what led us to the decision.
And what was the hardest part of that process of just getting to the decision to move down that path?
Boy, that's I think just facing the reality that life moves on, and we thought we were a pretty unique business, and we are. But when you die off, someone has to figure it out, and but we've done it a certain way for 60 years, and we finally came to the realization that we do have a very good thing going, but we need to pass the baton somehow. And we also had 5 siblings, Curt, and all 5 siblings talk to this day. So we're very thankful for the unity. A lot of families don't always have that, but to get all 5 kids on board was another challenge.
Can you talk about that a little bit, about how you went about that? I mean, I'm guessing that not everybody was 100% on the same page on the first day. So there must have been some kind of process you went through to help allow that to evolve in a positive and constructive way.
Yeah, well, because this was all new territory, we were all rookies at this. We needed an education, capital planning brought us all together with a few key other consultants, and just started to put some numbers on the whiteboard. We started to say, what if we were to sell? It would take 6 months. It would, here's kind of based on your EBITDA, this is what you'd probably get in the industry. And we all kind of, at that point, after that half-day conversation, we just said, okay, let's go for
And from there, what can you tell us about that process? What about the process was sort of as you expected it to be, and what surprises came up along the way?
Change is hard. And so I think especially the people operating in the business, there were three, I say, you know, our parents passed, and that was a trigger point. We also have a brother who was paralyzed, confined to a bed. Also have a brother that just came down with multiple myeloma. So the realities of life were starting to kick in. And but anyway, for the three of us that were in the business, change is hard, and to realize that you won't be in control was a hard concept to face. I think what we realized too is that we are a complicated business. There's a reason why we're number 2 in the nation. There's a reason why we have a niche. So what we had to do is to define what that was, but that's not always easy. And we were interrogated by our broker here to get it to the point that we could communicate that to the outside world. So you have to study. I did more studying, Curt, about our company, why we do what we do, than I ever done in the history of our company, because we had to advertise it to someone else.
Yep. And to actually articulate some of those things that you always assumed as givens, right? When you're in it every day. Question for everybody, and Jay, maybe we'll start with you. I'm just curious. I'd love to, hear, Jay, you've just done your first acquisition. Tim, you've just kind of gone through a good number of them over the last 18 months. And then Rich, I know yours is just fresh, as you mentioned, coming out, but I'd be interested to know now, having the benefit of hindsight, which is always a wonderful thing, would you do it again? How do you feel like it's going? Have you gotten what you had hoped for? Just, on a scale of 1 to 10, how successful do you feel like, it's been relative to what you had hoped for? You want to kick that off, Jay?
It's been a big learning curve on a lot of levels, even on personal levels. We going into this, I thought, well, we're such dominant leaders in California. How hard could it be to move to another state? But no, it's definitely been a big learning curve. I mean, every book you read about, expansion and setting up new offices, typically says you want to have that manager who's going to be running that inside your company for a minimum of 3 years. They know exactly how you run and your processes, your cultures. We didn't have that. We didn't have that option. We found we knew somebody in our industry in California that didn't work for us that wanted to move up here, and so there was a big learning curve there for him. Just understanding our business, our culture, our processes, and so that in turn led to me having to spend a lot more time up here than I had anticipated. So in order to do that, I had to restructure my entire company. We had to appoint a general manager, and I literally had to get out of operations 100%, change my role completely. And but now it's smoothing out. I would say it's a 7.5 on the 10 scale. I think I would do it again. I learned a lot, and I'm continuing to learn. But on the personal level, I started coming up here. We bought the company, and then COVID hit. It was lockdown, and then once it started loosening up a little bit, I started coming up here, spending more and more time in hotels, which wasn't great. Ended up buying a boat on the lake, living there all summer, while my girlfriend, who works for ADP Payroll, worked off the back of the boat on her laptop. So there's been a lot of personal sacrifice to make this work. Luckily now we have a home here, so we have real roots in the ground. But we're living 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, which is a strain on everything. It's a strain on friendships. It's a strain on my dog's mental health when we're gone this long. But overall, I think it's gone well, and I think that we're going to continue to grow here. We're actually expanding to new markets here that aren't even markets in California. So we're really seeing potential.
What do you see the impact on your business? Has it been, meaningful enough to be worth the effort in your mind?
I am actually really impressed on the core group of managers that run this operation, which is about 12 of us, right? That really run the day to day. And everybody in my company stepped their game up to allow us to do this. And so it not only pushed me, it pushed everybody in our organization to really shine. And so that's a beautiful part of this acquisition
Yep.
that I
Yep.
did not expect.
Tim, how about you? Is it too early to kind of do a full assessment of the impact that these acquisitions have made and how you're feeling about them?
Yeah, I'm going to apologize. I've been on mute because the landscapers have decided to trim the bushes outside my office here. So I apologize if you're getting feedback. But
No problem.
yes, certainly it's too early. But one thing that's helped me, that and this is just like when the last couple of weeks, is a realization of really going back and revisiting my initial reason to do what we did, which I felt I was getting away from. So what I really was going to do as far as the acquisitions is I was acquiring these companies because of their expertise in what they did and how they ran their businesses. And I was starting to say internally in my own head, well, no, they have to run their businesses how I've always run my business. And if they don't, they're wrong. And in the last couple of weeks, this is all internal conversation, by the way. It's not anything I've shared with other people, but I've come to realize, no, they're doing great. They're doing great. And I have to go back to my original premise of I'm here to support them, to make them more successful, rather than they're here to make me more successful. And if I can make them more successful, then we all can win. And that's something that I was not dealing with well, because there's some different cultures in terms of how they're some of the folks see the world and culturally and whatnot. And so all good people, and we all see the world differently. So that's been one of the learning curves for me that I've been dealing with.
No, that's great. And Rich, how about your outcome? How successful do you feel? You're what are you now? 10 weeks into it or something? And how are you feeling?
Curt, I hopefully it's not too much of an exaggeration, but it's a dream come true. It's if we look back 2-3 years ago, we started the process. The 3 reasons I mentioned were estate planning, some kind of comfort level that there was some sunset, the sunset years of the 5 siblings would have some kind of retirement monies put in it. And so the liquidation event happened, and we were scurrying around with our heads cut off during the month of December to finish it, because we put a target that we wanted to get it closed by New Year's Eve, and we did so. But I think so anyway, the liquidation event happened at the end of December. So I think the second part is like I said, we hit a ceiling in our sales. We hit a ceiling in our management. Now with this new company coming in, they are expecting growth. That's what equity companies do. They don't come in to just buy an investment to have it sit in neutral. So now we have an impetus, and because it's a good culture that marries with our culture. Again, we got down to 3 finalists, and there's no question that this was the best finalist when it came to culture. So now we have a culture that will blend with our current management team to accomplish that 20% growth a year, which is what we're targeting. I don't know if I told you that, Curt, but that's kind of what we're planning. And so I couldn't be happier. I think, like one of you two said, there's a new energy that comes, even though I'm 65, I'm getting a whole new bounce to my step because of that growth. I mean, we love business. We love our people. The third part is the whole succession planning thing for our 55 families. Now we can show to them a strategic plan so they can start to see the stability, part of the transition is that we would stay on 5 years, myself and my brother as key principals, as well as another key principal. So that gives all the comfort level to our employees that, that we're here for a good 5 years. And so I accomplished all those goals, the dreams come true, and I'm excited.
That's great. That's great. Well, I have a couple more, but I committed to at least allowing some time for audience questions. So Stella, I wanted to check in with you and just see, do we have any questions from the audience that we want to?
Not yet, but I do ask that if you do have questions, to please use the Q&A box down below, and I'm gonna keep my eye open for it. We had oh, here we go. Here's a question, and this is for all of the participants. Is there any buyer's and seller's remorse, or essentially anything you miss about the way your company was before or after buying or selling?
No, great question. Jay,
Yeah,
you
I'll jump in for a second. We don't have any buyer's remorse. Things haven't gone to plan like we thought. We're having to, bob and weave and figure things out along the way. But to Rich's point about, succession plan and your staff, and they poured their heart into your business too. For them to see us growing as a company, and knowing that we're not just going to wither and die one day, but there's a bigger plan, a bigger purpose, has been a great thing. And the vulnerability side, I think, is key. Is like Rich, I can tell by just talking to Rich that he's talking to his employees about this. He's being open. They're letting him know, and that's if you're a kind of owner that's keeping this all close to your chest and doing things in the background, you really spook the company. So to be open and honest and have that vulnerability, I think is a huge, huge piece of making this successful.
Great comments. Tim, Rich?
Yeah, I think for myself, there's no regret, no remorse. Ask me this question a month from now. We are giving what we call a thank you bonus, a success bonus of about 5% of the proceeds to our entire employee base. And that's going to be handed out in March. So they're either going to run in March and say goodbye, or they're going to be on for the long-term future. I'm hoping the second, but so yeah, talk to me a month from now. But at this point, there's no regret, no remorse.
Very nice gesture there. Tim, how about you?
I wouldn't say I have any regrets, remorse. I think the biggest thing that I had to come to realize is that part of our strategy was that the other teams would work more, would work in terms of cross-selling our services more. But you've realized they've been doing what they've been doing for 30 years, and whether or not they're going to jump on board with what you do as quickly as you would like them to. Someone once told me, whatever you think it's going to take, double it. Whatever you think it's going to cost, double it, and then you'll be okay. That would be more of my concerns, is that it doesn't always happen exactly as you think it would, but that's part of the plan. And be okay with that and just deal with it.
Roll with it. Stella, is there another question that we wanted to get to?
There's a question coming up, and I'm waiting for the full question.
So jump in when you get it, because I wanted to follow up with something that Jay said, which struck me, which is, I think what I heard from you is while there's always the potential for people within the old organization, right, your base Sacramento operation, to say, well, wait a minute, the boss is gone, and are we now not his favorite kid anymore, kind of a thing. But it sounds like from your comment that the opposite has actually taken place, that they're looking at it and saying, gee, look at us, and they're taking pride in the growth and expansion of the company. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, that is accurate. Before we didn't have as structured weekly meetings. We didn't have, now that I'm removed and part-time from our base operations, we've gotten really good at, with COVID, we've created Zoom meetings, right? Yep. And so those weekly meetings, keeping everybody on target, keeping everybody in check, making sure that the financial side of the business is having their own weekly meetings, and that their construction side is having their own weekly, and the owners are having their own weekly, to really be open and honest and let everybody know what's going on. You know, when like our Sacramento side is doing all the accounting and bookkeeping for this side up here. So there's a blend of people up here that are having to deal with people in Sacramento that they've never met face to face. Was a little awkward at first, but everything has been smoothing out, you know, as we go. And like Tim said, you know, you just, there's lots of things you don't expect to happen. And I mean, that's the fun of building a business, right? Is hitting those curveballs, figuring out your avenue around it, and making the best out of it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I have a question for Rich. Did anyone in the G3s want to keep your company in the family? And did they have any say in the final decision?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I am, you know, our daughter's 27. She was 24 when we started this process. Very sharp. She's been with the company for 5 years now. A lot of people thought she was going to run the company, and she still might no, I think that's probably one of the reasons why it took so long, is because we really wanted to wrestle with that. We are a family business, and we wanted to totally research, is this a possibility? And so, yeah, she was brought into all the high-level conversations, a lot of family talk, you know, what she and her husband want to do, and so forth. Of course, we'd like her to have grandkids too, but that's another matter.
So Rich, as a follow-up to that, what advice would you offer up to the other family businesses who may find themselves in at least partially similar exploration stages, relative to the process that you went through in terms of getting to the point of making the decision to sell, as well as the process for actually making that happen? Any last minute words of wisdom for the audience?
Curt, I went to business school in Hayward, you know, of course, 4 or 5 decades ago. I don't think I took away anything except that you're supposed to put a 5-year plan together. And I don't think we ever did that until it got forced upon us with those 3 reasons I told you earlier. But I would just say, put together a 5-year plan, a 3 to 5 year plan. Where do you want to be as a family? How realistic is it? Are you putting some time frames on how long everybody wants to work? It's kind of, for us, we had to force that into the agenda. It's not an easy decision, but just make a 5-year plan and carve out the time to take it seriously.
The thing, having gone through part of that, I'll just add a little bit of that because I guess it's outside my moderator role, but having gone through some portions of that with you, the thing that really struck me is the fact that you always kept the family first and the family relationship and dynamic first. And, you know, the business was there to support the family and not the family there to ensure that, you know, the family shouldn't sacrifice in order to have the business stay in some form or another. And even when there were disagreements amongst those 5 siblings, I can't remember a single scenario where that was anything other than respectful. So that may have just been a function of the personalities involved, or that may have been, or the strong ties that you guys have as siblings that you formed growing up. Or it could have been discipline that you guys, you know, imposed upon yourselves. But whatever the cause, it was impressive to see. So kudos to you guys for that.
There's always going to be family politics. There's always going to be differences of opinion. We're all pretty strong and stubborn in our way. We grew up in an entrepreneurial family, but you do have to work very hard, Curt, like you're saying, to make sure that you think about the value of family, how you come to a decision that is bought off by everyone.
Excuse me. Almost made it through the whole webinar without that. So Tim and Jay, any from your perspective, final words of wisdom? We're down to just the last couple minutes, and I'll turn it back over to Stella to wrap things up for the session. But final words of wisdom to anybody that's out there who's never done an acquisition, who's maybe thinking, gee, maybe we should consider an acquisition. What final last word of wisdom would you offer?
I think that I don't think this would have happened without us kind of vocally putting it out there that we were interested in going, new directions, possibly acquiring another company. And it's amazing who comes out of the woodworks when you're vocal about that. I mean, since we've acquired this company, we've had 3 other companies come to us saying, acquire us too. And, it wasn't the right fit, or it didn't work, or they thought their EBITDA was way higher than it really was. But, if you're thinking about it, if it's at all a possibility in your future, be vocal about it. And you'd be surprised, the people that come to you to approach you to sell.
Yep, good comments. Tim?
The only added comment I would make is once you make a decision, you put a team together to go do acquisitions, have a good idea of, well, how is it going to happen once the deal actually happens? And we were fortunate to have a part-time CFO similar to what Rich had, and he had a team, and we talked about that before we actually did any of the acquisitions, and they have been very helpful in bringing those organizations into our situation, handling how do you handle payroll, and how do you handle accounting systems, and how do you transition AR, and how do you do all the banking kinds of things that need to be done. And so you don't know all the things that have to be done, but if you can have that team, whether they're your in-house team, which is not what we have, but people that we've affiliated with to work on those, it has been very helpful. So if you go that direction, good to have that defined.
Wonderful. Well, I think with that, we are at our time. So Jay, Tim, Rich, and well, I can't offer it up to him in person, certainly Clark as well. Thanks you guys for sharing your time, sharing your experience and your candor throughout the conversation.
Yeah, and
Really,
feel
really
free to
appreciate
reach
it.
out. Feel free to reach out to me if you need any other follow-up, through Curt or through Stella.
Thank you, Rich. Very much appreciate it.
Same here. If anybody has any questions on the road, they want to reach out to us. We're not hard to find. We're part of the Family Business Center. So
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stella, over to you.
Thank you very, very much. And I am going to be working on getting this recording not only up on our website, but to all of the participants, I will be sending out the link to the website, and I'll also send out the contact information from our panelists in case someone wants to reach out personally and either thank you for everything you've shared, or if they have an additional follow-up question that they might have been too shy to ask on this platform. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in person, I hope, sometime very soon. Take care.
Panelists, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
thank you.